afternoon. I'd like to thank you all for coming to the keynote. As you know, Paula Smith, and it's a great honor to be here this weekend. When Lady Catherine and the Board of Self asked me, first of all, thank you for allowing me to speak to you all this afternoon. When Lady Catherine came to me and asked me if I would do the keynote speech, I was pretty blown away. Why me? Who am I? I just work in the community, that's it. I know that I've done different things, but it's nothing extraordinary. It's just stepping up and doing the work. So I sat down and I really tried to think, what did I want to do? I looked at different keynotes, and I thought I wanted to create this astounding speech that you could walk away from today and be changed forever. In reality, though, those moments come quietly, and they come from nowhere. They're not in the middle, usually, of a keynote. A lot of times they're one-on-one, when we just meet people and they touch our lives. So I wrote several keynotes, and I wrote them, and I wrote them, and I couldn't seem to get it down right on paper. I love to write, but I'm not a speech writer. I'm not the type person that writes a speech and then can stand and read it. I shoot from the hip. For me, it's speaking from the heart. It's what impacts me for that day. I had a really rough week this week, and something impacted me greatly, and it was, without going into too much confidentiality, I'm a nurse, an oncology nurse, and I was given a 6-year-old child this week who has less than a year to live. And it rocked me to the core. I just couldn't wrap my head around this. So it kind of helped me to get back to looking at what's important in life, what matters to us. For me, I feel that the reason that Lady Catherine and Self requested me to do the key speaker is because of me. Not because of the leather dyke, but because of Paula. And because I feel like I live my life being real. And that's not being overly confident, that's not being boisterous, it's just about keeping it real and being true to yourself. One of the most important books in my life, and one that I have gifted to very special people in my life, is The Velveteen Rabbit. Because it's about being real. And that's really what we need to do in this community. I was always, and I'm going to say ahead of time, Catherine, I'm sorry, I'm going off script, because the speech I sent to you, I just didn't feel like it was me. I felt like I was trying to cater to the masses, and that's not why you chose me. I think you chose me because you wanted me to be me. And it's somewhat similar, but it's about being me and my path, and how I got to be here. So, I have never felt like I fit in anywhere. In high school, I was one of those kids that was in every club that there was, but never felt like I fit in. I was always that square peg trying to fit in that circle. I was a chameleon though, because I would join the clubs and I would put on a really good show, but I was never me. I had this void in my life. And in that, I think that many of you probably felt that way. You were the outsiders who were looking in, the band club geeks. Some of you may have been on the AV committee. We were just those ones that were just always, and I see lots of smiles. Oh, water, excuse me. So I lived my life with this void. But let me back up first and say that many of you know me in leather, here at events, and even my posts on Facebook, if any of you are my friends. I post events that are going on. I'm supportive of many things. As Lady Catherine had said, I co-found clubs. That's my passion. But that's not only who Paula is. That's just a small fraction of me. I'm a mother. I've got children who are 27 and 33. 13-year-old granddaughter. I'm a mentor. I'm a student. I was a masochist until I had a stroke, and I'm on blood thinners, so I can't do that anymore. Although through my journey, I transitioned. I thought I was a slave, and y'all can laugh now at that one. Tried the submissive role, and I now serve, and I embrace that. I'm also an addict and an alcoholic. I also suffer from severe anxiety. I wake up at least 3 times a week thinking no time. I also suffer from self-esteem, believe it or not. That chameleon thing comes in there. And I share that with you because at least one of those things everyone in this room can relate to. We can all put on a face and make it look good. We can all make it look like we're shiny and bright and we are like spectacular. And inside my head, I am freaking screaming, trying to block out the white noise. And that's actually what led me down the road to addiction. At least when I drank and I used crack and cocaine, I could hide that for a while. But I woke up and still had to be me. And I had to look in the mirror. So it's about being real. My journey here was that I always had kinky thoughts, but I didn't think anybody else was like me. I thought there was something wrong with me all these years. And then I was married. And after about 5 years, the marriage kind of got dull, and we discovered kink. And my husband and I grew into that, and it was fabulous. You know, all of a sudden it was like very exciting because we would play master slave, and I'd get off like a freaking nut, and he was afraid of it. So then that created a problem. So after 17 years, I got divorced, and here I was at 35, now a kinky woman. And you know, once you open Pandora's box, you cannot close that shit up. I'm sorry, it's there. It's like you can't put it back and pretend you're not who you are, or else you're miserable. So that was in the 90s, and I was a bisexual woman living in a straight world. So I had no idea what gay was. I didn't know that there were gay bars. My first sexual encounter, I was 15, and I didn't know what gay was. I just know I liked being with a girl. But, so I grew up in this small town, and here I am now kinky, or I didn't even know that was a word. I just knew I liked weird things, with pantyhose and duct tape. And I wasn't drag queen at that time. But, so what I did, that was the era of the internet. Chat rooms were big. And I remember entering and finding a chat room that was an online dungeon. It was called State of Insanity. And in this chat room, there were people doing these elaborate scenes. I mean, they were stringing people up and tying people up and beating people. And I was like, oh my God, I like found my home. And it was fabulous. And it's interesting because I know at least 5 people in the leather community today who came from State of Insanity. And actually my best friend is who I met there. And she actually was my mentor and who kind of parlayed me into the leather community. So, you know, we never settle for anything. We always want more. So the online shit got really old. I mean, so much for pretending to be beat. I wanted to see what that was really like. And my so-called master, and I use that term lightly, I moved my entire life and my entire world and actually disrupted my children because they stayed with their father. But I moved to South Carolina to be a living slave. Disastrous situation. Put myself in some very bad, very dangerous and bad situations. But it was my entrance into DS. And in that time, it was brief, but I learned that there was more out there. And once I got out of that situation, my friend, who I met on SOI, her name is Lisa, and I started, at the same time, there were events starting, conferences started to crop up. Y'all were lucky because conferences are very common now. You can go anywhere in the United States. You could not do that back in the 90s. It was hidden. And back in the 90s, at least in my world, the kink and BDSM community and the leather clubs, what we consider, and I consider the leather community, were separate. They were not under one umbrella. So we started going to events, and I went to Black Rose 10 for my first event. And oh my God, I walked in there, and they had a dungeon that was an entire garage floor. And it was like a kid in a candy store. I have to tell you, my eyes were as big as can be. And anything that you could ever have imagined was going on. And I thought, these are my people. I like all my people. And my void was filled once again. I didn't have that emptiness. And I found something that truly hit a chord in me. Problem with that, though, is you go to a conference, you come home, you hang your fetish wear up, you hang your leather up, and you're back to life, and the void was back again. For me, I needed more. And at that time, my friend Lisa said, well, maybe you need to look at a leather club. I had no idea what the hell that meant. So I asked her, and she said, you know, they're gay men who are into leather, who have clubs and get together. So what do you do in the 90s when you don't know how to find something and you're on AOL? You search AOL for Charleston and leather. And I searched, and I searched. And it took me a while, but I eventually found someone who knew someone who was leather. And they told me about the Trident Knights, who was the leather club in Charleston at that time. And they were very gracious. They were a gay males club. They had one female. And they welcomed me into their meetings. And I went in and I sat and I listened. And I felt some form of familiarity. Even though at that time I identified as bisexual. But I felt familiar. So I went back again. And they welcomed me. Now, not all the men welcomed me, let me tell you. Being a woman in the men's community was not always easy. Now, I identify as a leather dyke, and leather dykes are a dying breed. We're the women who came into the men's clubs back in the day when it was all gay men, and they welcomed us. Not all of them, but most of them, and they embraced us, and they taught us. But we didn't demand a seat at their table. We worked beside them. We learned from them. And slowly, we gained their trust. That also was a time when AIDS hit. And the gay men's community took the biggest hit that you could ever see. And we were there to help. But that's also where the leather clubs stepped up. And they took care of their brothers. Back then, you were fired when you had AIDS. You lost your insurance. You lost your job. You lost your friends. And you lost your home if you didn't have money. No one would touch those men. The clubs started fundraising. The clubs supported these people. And that's where fundraising came about in the community. My heart is with the clubs. I am what I call a leather snob. I admit that. Because to me, and again, this is my opinion, and you can differ if you want, This is the foundation of the community. This is where we started. The clubs have always been there. And the clubs will continue to be there. Now, time has changed. And change is imperative to survive. So at this point in life, we have an umbrella that now encompasses all forms of kink and BDSM and pups, master-slave, girls, boys, littles. You may not like it, but it's a part of our community now. With change, we need to embrace growth. I may not like how things are going, but it is our community. And if we don't embrace it, and we don't work with each other, we'll lose it. I'm kinky because I like to get off. My sex is raunchy. I'm not going to lie. I say I'm a gay man all the time. I'm not a woman. I like things rough. I like, I worry that we are losing our history. With change, it's good to change. And it's good to grow. But remember where we came from. It's really important to know your history. And I'm not talking the old guard. I'm not talking the next guard, leather guard. Excuse me. We don't need to romanticize what people think it was. And books are fabulous to read and to see some of these. I love Laura's books. And Laura will be the first one to tell you that that's not reality. What was reality was that men came back from World War II, and we got a lot of the military history that we have in leather today from that. The motorcycle clubs are a great foundation for our clubs. They rode the motorcycles up, the satyrs rode the motorcycles up into the hills in California, and they had a fucking party. They had raunchy sex, they drank, and they had a camaraderie with one another, and they beat each other. I'm not endorsing that you do that, but that's where things started, and our clubs evolved. Remember your history. Remember that there were people at Stonewall, there were leather men and women who risked their lives so that you all can be here today. Seriously, because even 20 years ago, it was not safe. Well, yes, it was at 20, excuse me, let's say 30. It wasn't necessarily safe to be in a conference room or to have the gentleman stand on the stage last night and say, you are welcome here. Because Southeast LeatherFest found last year they were not welcome where they were. So there were men and women that have fought and lost their lives for what we're doing today. We need to grow, and we need to stay real. We need to embrace each other and help each other. I hear a lot of infighting and a lot of backbiting, and it gets so tiresome. Really, just put the drama away. What are we here for? We're here to have fun. If you're not having fun, then stop it, really. I also hear people say that it's just about fun. And the one thing that, for me with the leather clubs, that rings true is that I love that my clubs that I belong to really and truly do uphold the trust, honor, and respect. Not everybody always does, but they do. These are things, though, that you should have known before you came into the community. I'm sorry. If you don't have manners, really, if you don't have freaking manners, stay outside. And I really think anybody coming into this community, we need to give them a copy of Emily Post's Miss Manners. And I will say, I'm proud to say say that's something that Low Country Leather is now implementing, that all of our new pledges are going to have to read that book, because that's what we need to get back to. And the protocols, just teaching basic common good things. If you learn good manners when you were a kid, coming into the community is not going to be that difficult, because it's about good manners. So I embrace our clubs. I implore you to seek out your clubs. They still are, a lot of the clubs, primarily gay men. But they're open to people coming in and learning. They're open to have you join us and to learn some history. For me, the camaraderie of the clubs is what filled that void that I lost, or always had. When I found the clubs, that filled that void. To have these people that in my life who, hell, we have potlucks and we go to the beach and have 8-year-old days on the beach flying kites, and we have times that we go bowling. It's embracing each other as a family. Seek out your clubs. If not to join, just to get to know us. You need to all come together, and Southeast has been good with that. When I moved back to Charleston 3 years ago, as I said, my agenda was coming home. I spent the last 10 years working in the national community with contests because of being an American Leather woman, and it's been great. But I've now committed myself to coming home, where my roots are. My roots are in the clubs and fostering the clubs, and my roots are here in the Southeast. In closing, I'd like to read you my favorite excerpt from the Velveteen Rabbit. Real isn't how you are made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a very long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you're real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, he said, or by being hit or bit, whichever you want? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or have been carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair's been rubbed off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints, and very shabby. Can we all relate to that? But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people you don't know. Be real, be true to yourselves. Just be good to one another.